And now talking about the types of works or the types of companies that you help to create, what is the most common kind of service or product that you see that people offer for this kind of, how you sell independent, located?
The vast majority, or we can just say digital nomads, to make it easy, but the vast majority of our digital nomad clients register Wyoming LLCs. Now, there some people like to do Delaware because maybe they read online it's a little bit better. There are some benefits to Delaware in a few narrow cases, but for the vast majority, like 95% of people, Wyoming is a better jurisdiction for registering your company. And like well, let's talk about U.S. people versus
Yeah.
non-U.S. people, because U.S. people have a different tax situation than basically everyone else in the world when it comes to like digital nomads, because Americans, even when they move abroad and they live in a different country, they still have to file and pay tax in the U.S. Now, there are some tax loopholes for Americans, with foreign earned income exclusion and foreign tax credit, and some other possibilities there. So maybe they don't have a big tax burden, but they still have a tax filing option. Whereas if you're a non-American, pick the nationality, it doesn't matter. Let's say you're, Venezuelan,
No.
very relevant today, right? So you're a Venezuelan that's left Venezuela and you have an online business, let's say a SaaS product, software as a service product, and it operates completely in the cloud, completely online. Maybe you've got some software developers, let's say, I don't know, in Serbia, and maybe you've got some customer service support people in, I don't know, let's say the Philippines, and you're Venezuelan, and you're a digital nomad, and you're like traveling around the world, and you're living in one country for maybe a month or two, another place for a month or two, like that. Well, a U.S. LLC is perfect for that because number one, you're not going to have any U.S. tax obligation because you don't actually have any what we call U.S. source income. So you don't have any income that's directly tied to what's called ECI, or effectively connected income to a U.S. trade or business. Because even though the company is based in the U.S., maybe you have Stripe in the U.S., maybe you have a bank account in the U.S., it doesn't matter because you're not physically doing your work in the US. You don't have an office there. You don't have a warehouse there. You're not selling physical goods being delivered to US clients. You're selling in the cloud to anybody who lands on your website. And physically, your work is being performed in Serbia and the Philippines, for example. And then you personally are the owner and manager of that company. That's what's called mind and management. And there's no mind and management of the company in the US. Mind and management could be in Mexico for a couple of months, maybe in Brazil for a month or two, maybe in Latvia for a couple of months, like that. So you don't have any tax obligation in the US. So you could actually run your company without paying any US tax whatsoever on that company. And then if you, as an individual, do not have tax residency in any country. So using that example I just gave, a Venezuelan digital nomad who's living a month or two here and there, he's probably not becoming a tax resident in any one jurisdiction. So he doesn't have a tax residency anymore. So he basically is running his business completely tax-free. Well, I say tax-free, I mean income tax-free. He's still paying things like VAT and sales tax and fuel tax and, all these consumption taxes. It's hard to avoid that unless you live in a cave, I guess. But, and then the other thing, like, let's say, just using you, Caesar, as an example, you're a Mexican living in Latvia. It could make sense for you as well, because you would actually you could bill your clients from a U.S. company and avoid VAT. And then any income you draw out of that LLC, because it's a pass-through, is treated like ordinary income tax in Latvia. So, because I assume you're a tax resident there.
Yeah.
So it makes it easy for you just to pay ordinary income tax as an individual. And then it might make it easier for you to run your business than dealing with some of the complexities and compliance of dealing with a Latvian registered company, like the monthly filings, VAT registration, and stuff.
You just kind of almost answered my next question, because I wanted to ask, from your point of view and your experience, what you think about the if you know about the Estonian e-residence for opening a company.
I know a lot about it. Actually, I was one of the very first e-residents in Estonia back in and 2010, I think, 10 or 11, whenever it first came out. I was
Hmm.
literally in the first, within the first month, I had my e-residency of them launching the program. I did it back when you had to go to the police station in Thailand
Hmm.
to apply and get your picture taken. And then I think like 2 years or a year or two after that, you could do it at an embassy. But I did it when it had to be done in person. And I had an Estonian company for a while, but my company in Estonia, we actually had a physical location in Estonia at the time. I was a partner in a company there, and we had a building and everything, actually based in Tartu. And for me, at that time, it made sense because I had a physical connection to Estonia. Like I actually had a location there with people coming to work and equipment and all this stuff happening. I think Estonia did a really good job of marketing it towards the digital nomad audience. However, it is generally a pretty terrible option for most digital nomads. And when I say that, it doesn't mean it's not a workable solution. What I mean by it being terrible, I mean there are generally much better options than an Estonian company. So first of all, you can get e-residency. Sure, you can do it at an embassy without having to go to Estonia. Great, you can pick up your card. Great, you can get the little chip reader, plug it in, you can go online, pay your money, register your company, no problem. You can even do your tax filings every month, your VAT and your income tax. And those are two separate filings. They have to be done monthly. If you are one day late, you get hit starting one day late, you get hit with fines in Estonia. Ask me how I know. And you have to do both, if you're VAT registered, you have to do both the VAT and the income tax filing. And what we learned also, even though they promote it as very foreigner friendly, there's a lot of sections on the Estonian website about tax related things that are not in English. And I don't speak Estonian. And my Russian is not good enough to get by on a
Hmm.
tax website. It's too complicated. So basically, that means you don't really have a choice, but you have to hire an Estonian accountant to deal with it for you, so they can translate everything for you properly and do your proper filing. So that just adds an additional cost, another couple hundred, 200-300 euros a month. So it raises your costs on it. And the other thing is you will pay tax on profit distributions. Now, they do have a nice thing where you don't have to pay tax on retained earnings in the company, but you will have to pay, there's a little bit of a scale there, but approximately 20% tax on profit distributions. Now, early on, when Estonia first launched that Estonian company tax regime and the e-residency, there was a lot of promoters out there talking about how if you weren't an Estonian resident, then you didn't have to pay the tax in Estonia, the company profits tax, that you only paid it as the individual when you received the profit distribution as the individual. However, that's not really the case. You're supposed to pay it. So, for example, if you're the owner of an Estonian company and the company makes 100,000 euros and you are, Venezuelan living in Brazil, well, if you pay yourself 100,000 euros from the profit of the company, you're supposed to pay 20,000 euros to Estonia in a company profits tax. So, and there was a lot of people early on that were promoting it, saying, "Oh, you don't have to pay the company profits tax because you're not an Estonian physical, you're not
Yeah.
actually an Estonian tax resident." And so then there's been some tax battles with the Estonian tax office. And I can tell you from firsthand experience, the Estonian tax office is extremely aggressive. They will come after you even for €1. And it's just not really the ideal situation for digital nomads. It's a lot of compliance headaches. You're going to have a regular bookkeeper or accountant to do your filings for you, and you are actually going to have to pay tax. And then it can create tax complications if you have tax residency in another country with double taxation agreements and tax treaties and that sort of thing. Whereas for the vast majority of digital nomads, a US LLC like Wyoming or Delaware or New Mexico or whatever, you have one filing you have to do once a year. It's actually two forms. It's a total of about 4 pages. You have to do one time a year. Unless you have what we call ECI or effectively connected income to a U.S. trade or business, unless you have ECI, there's no tax obligation in the U.S. If you do have a tax obligation, that would be more, you would have more serious connection to the US anyway. Like you would have an office there, you would have employees where you're withholding payroll tax on. Maybe you have a warehouse and you're selling, like maybe you have an e-commerce store and you have your warehouse of your goods in the US. In that case, yes, you do have a tax obligation in the US. But in my experience, the vast majority of digital nomads, they're doing digital products, consulting, coaching, software, digital download products, something virtual in the cloud, like service-based or digital product type businesses. That's what the vast majority of them are doing. And in that case, Estonia looks very unattractive because also, on top of that, you're going to have to charge all your clients VAT. Whereas with a US company, you do not, because there's no requirement to charge VAT for a digital product sold from the US.
And you again read my mind, because I wanted to ask you precisely the practical advice for someone who would like to start their business. And I think you just gave a lot of pearls for people that it's looking to start a business. And unfortunately, time is.
And by the way, I didn't even mention, I'll mention quickly, but I didn't even mention it before. But the US company is going to cost you, let's say, half or less than half what it costs to set up and run an Estonian company. That, to me, that's just the icing on the cake. That's not even the most important factor. But the cost of it is about half or less than half the Estonian.
If there are people listening to us now who would like to contact you to get to know more about your business or get a consultation, how they can find you?
The best way to reach us is just through our website, Business Anywhere.
Okay, we're going to put the link in the comments below. And I just want to say thank you very much, Bobby. We are almost out of time, but I appreciate very much your time, your expertise, your thoughts. But I want to ask you a last question before saying goodbye. With everything that we are seeing regarding technology and how things are changing for working remotely, is there any transformation that you would like to see becoming reality by the end of the decade?
Ooh, I mean, that's a tough question because I mean we've got basically some new AI generational leap about every 3 weeks now. It seems like there's something new with AI that comes up like at least once a month that everybody like at that moment is like, oh my God, I never foresaw that happening. There's some brilliant entrepreneur that's come up with this new tool to use for AI or a new AI platform that's doing something new. Honestly, I don't think I'm smart enough to figure out like those types of things, only because things are moving so quickly. This is not like the industrial age anymore. The industrial age, you could predict like decades into the future, like how things were going to work and like planning for budgeting and R&D and stuff like that. Now, how can you do that? How can you budget for things like you don't even know if your customers, if you're going to need customer service employees, 6 months from now.
Yeah.
Even right now, a lot of that can be outsourced completely to AI agents. Not all of it, but 6 months from now, maybe. Like, who knows?
Thanks for watching until the end. Tell your friends about it, and please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Oh, or watch one more video. And if you'd like to learn more, you can find the whole podcast and other episodes on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Links in the description.